Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jenny Beal, and this is the Awareness Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Høllen Vink to talk about the Dharma Art of Miksang and the role it can play in the non-dual path. So welcome, Høllen. I've studied Miksang with Høllen for several years, and I found it to be a really beautiful practice, which is perfectly aligned with the direct path. So it's really great to be able to share this with you all. So as usual, I'll start by giving you a very brief synopsis of Høllen's background. Høllen Vink is a practitioner and teacher of Miksang, a method of contemplative photography. In her late teens, she was an expert ice skater and focused all her efforts on becoming an Olympic speed skater. But 2 weeks before the Dutch Championships, an accident put an end to her Olympic dream and her whole world came crashing down. She felt totally lost. Initially lacking any clear direction, she spent much of her time partying, discovering normal life and experimenting with drugs. But her love of art led her to art school, where she studied photography and sculpture. However, the contemporary art scene wasn't what she was really looking for. After another period of despair, she came across the Dharma arts teaching her spiritual teacher, Chogyam Trungpa, and rediscovered her innocent, childlike joy. Her focus was initially on the Dharma arts, but she went on to learn meditation and study the Shambhala teachings and Tibetan Buddhism, living and working in Shambhala centers in France and the US. After a number of years, her Dharma teacher encouraged her to go back out into the world. She completed her Miksang training and qualified as a Miksang teacher with Michael Wood, who developed the original curriculum for Miksang training. She now runs Miksang courses in Europe and online, sharing her joy and freedom of being fully present and connected with the beauty of our ordinary, everyday experience. So that's quite some story, Høllen, from being a top ice skater to studying conventional art to Dharma art. So after that really devastating realization that your career as an Olympic athlete was over, there was a period of depression, I suppose a bit of craziness, really.
Yeah. I would say that's an understatement.
Yes.
Yeah. If I was so trained to be focused and just become good at one particular thing,
yeah,
apply that same to everything else that I did afterwards. So when I started partying, I did it like really totally, and I just like I didn't see any obstacles. Basically, there was just like a never-ending path with whatever I took on.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I could say like maybe I had a lack of boundaries, or I think I was just discovering boundaries in normal life. I just didn't know what that was, because as a professional athlete, you become trained in having no boundaries. Like, you can always go further. There's always something more and further. And so that had like a downside that I couldn't like stop to myself at a certain point. I had to learn that while I was just stumbling and doing it. And at the other hand, it provided me a really good already experience that there are really no boundaries.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think a lot of professional athletes, they know that experience. There's just like when you're in the zone, they call it, or when you're aligned, then everything goes effortlessly and it feels like there's no boundaries really.
Yeah.
And just like the effort and the joy and the elation and when you reach a certain like accomplishment professionally in the sports, then of course you get confirmed. So that's nice.
So after all that was over, what shook you out of that sort of craziness and depression and led you to art school. There was something within you that somehow said, I can't go on being this crazy, I guess.
Yeah, like I was really timeless in that whole partying time. Like once you become involved in nightlife, and I met other people and very eccentric figures and like crazy nightlife. I thought that was so thrilling, and I hadn't done that in my teens. So I was really like, being a teen and at the same time becoming a young adult at the same time. So I was like really like open for everything. But then when I got involved into drugs, it started like mildly, just smoking some weed. And then I moved on to like, I couldn't handle it, by the way. I was always throwing up. So that wasn't really like my thing. And then I thought like a wheat cake, this like you bake a cake with all these hashies in there. I thought that was a good idea. And so friends came by, and then they also throw their stuff in there. So I lost control of how much was in there. And, and then we started eating it. And I didn't experience anything. Like I saw my friends going crazy. And I sent them home because I thought there was no fun, because they had fun. I had not, and I ate more, and then I ate another slice, and then another half slice. And by the time I really had sent them away. By the time they left, and the last person slammed the door, I got into this sort of like bang and bang, and I had like all these. I basically went into a trip, not even like just getting high in a nice way. I went in a really strong trip, like totally. And that was really nice for some time. And then it went bad. They call it a bad trip. So I lived in a house, they called the doctors, and they finally I was basically strapped in sort of kind of a thing and sent driven away by an ambulance to the hospital to get that they wanted to empty my stomach. But I was looking pretty extreme at the time. I had like a mohawk, all these nose rings and earrings. So by the time, and what I had forgotten, I had donated blood on that day, which didn't well. So I had a little hole in my arm. So by the time I went into the hospital, they thought I was like a drug addict. And I heard them talking about me, but I was going in and out all kinds of states. And apparently I had a blackout of 2 days, which I can't remember. But before I got into this whole crazy stuff, I had really loosened experiences. I could see through the house. I could hear all the people in the house talking. And later on, I checked it, and it was all true, because I really had heard all their conversations. And there was one guy that I really didn't want to have in my room, because he had some sort of dark aura around him. So, and he was like a very good friend of mine. So I had that was pretty intense. And after that, I thought, okay, I think it's not such a good idea to continue with this stuff. I think I have to become more serious. Like, what am I going to do with my life? I can't go on. So that shook me back into reality, and back into, getting like, what do I want to do with my life?
And then you went to art school, but you found that the contemporary art scene wasn't really what you wanted. So what was it about that experience that put you off a career in mainstream art?
It was a slow, progressive insights. It wasn't like I woke up one from the other day, because I really loved art school a lot. And I also studied with another teacher. I spent like 1 year in and out his place. It was in sculpture, so I really got to know how it was to be a sculptor and what a daily life is. And I had jobs also, because becoming a sculptor, basically, well, not many succeed to get a very effortless path in that. It's like the big bulk of artists, they have to have side jobs. So I had a lot of side jobs, and I was exploring art and getting some grants, and got my own studio, and I was like slightly moving towards some sort of like in the scene. But at the same time, I realized that I felt so unsure about myself, because my story was, didn't really had a story. like I couldn't really tell about my arts because it always depended who I was talking to. So I realized whoever I talked about my art, my story was different because it depended of the conversation. But I loved making my works. So I did 3-dimensional installations. I worked with iron, with pigments, with and photo works, I call them. So I used photos and I welded my own frames and explored with reverse colors, kind of sort of uncinnated photography. And at the end, I sort of moved the pictures out of the frame. I was just only working with the frames. And I consider that one of my best works, that I had a whole work made with frames hanging in wires, like 6 meters wide and 4 meters high. And it was just frames with like little colored glass and whatever. I thought it was about my high point of what I had made. But yeah, I wasn't drinking at that time. I wasn't doing drugs. I was leading a very healthy life by that time. And that was not really something that was much happening in the art world. So I felt a little bit of an outsider. And yeah, it slowly sort of dawned to me that I was like missing something. Like, every day I got up and I was like, I don't fit in, and that sort of got under my skin, and I missed some sense of purpose in my life. Like my relationships didn't went well. I saw my friends around me the same age. I was around 27 at the time, 28. They were getting married or living together or making plans. Getting some sort of like career, and I was just like, I felt like I was not on my right place, but I didn't know what it was. And I did some meditation, and I did explore. I was reading philosophical and spiritual books, but nothing clicked. And then a friend came by who I hadn't seen a half year, because at that time we didn't have cell phones, so there was no texting. So somebody just went away and came back after half a year, and. And I think I had like 1 postcard, and he was in India, and he came back totally excited about that he had met all kinds of spiritual teachers. But I was at the deep point of my life, like a rock bottom. Like I was feeling so depressed. I was just sitting on the couch and I was just smoking. I was smoking at the time, smoking cigarettes. And of course I had to have the best cigarettes again, and I had to do it thoroughly. So like I still had this sort of like athlete's mentality. And I just couldn't get off the couch anymore. And I was really I thought like, maybe my path is just this pain. I just have to give in to this pain, that I can't have a place in this world and on this earth. So I was very dramatic, by the way. So, but I was really thinking all these thoughts, and they became really solid. And so I felt dark and down and lack of energy. And then his friend came by, and he completely ignored my state of being, and he was completely elated, talking about his adventures half year in India. And he said, like, there's a talk from this Tibetan Rinpoche. Do you want to join? And he said it like, there's a Lama, and would you like to join? I didn't know what a Lama was. So I thought like maybe we were going to the zoo or something. And I was like, a bit odd, but like, okay, let's go. like really sort of like miscommunication. But of course, quickly I found out that it was a Tibetan teacher. So I was totally clueless going to this talk. And yeah, in that talk, something happened. I can't remember a word that was said, but this teacher started laughing, and I clicked with this laughing. I heard it, and I was like, I felt this deep joy, and I couldn't understand where that came from. But I felt this instant like awakeness, and like I would like to know this kind of joy. So that was a very direct transmission, basically. And so for me, the wordings were like, later I learned the language and how to talk and had my meditation experiences, but that was an indirect transmission.
Yeah. So you went on to learn meditation, you studied Shambhala Buddhism, and that's not something I've studied. So would you describe that as a path to awakening or enlightenment, or is it more a way of living? What are the
It's
main
both. I would
principles?
say it's both. It's so just a minor correction. I haven't studied with Chögyam Trungpa like in the living, because he passed away in 1987.
Yeah.
But he had this whole 3 streams of teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, the Shambhala teachings, and the Dharma Art teachings.
Mm-hmm.
So my first connection was the Dharma Art teachings, that I heard somebody said like they have a program with that in a Shambhala center. This same friend brought me to, and I only thought that then I need to be here. And so and it happened to be the next week, like there was a 4-day program on Dharma arts. So I had no idea, but I went, and so that was my entrance. And that the word Dharma is in front of arts. That's how it starts.
Mm-hmm.
So I was familiar with the conventional arts, with the contemporary arts, and then there was suddenly this Dharma art. And what is then this Dharma? So Dharma is a Sanskrit word, and it means, one of the translations, it means truth. Mm-hmm. And that means it has a lot of layers, of course, this truth. But basically here, the perspective in combination with the arts is that you calm down, you get to know yourself, you just know that the world is as it is. You have this Buddha nature in you, or in the Shambhala teachings, they call it basic goodness. You have it already. The world is already good. And then you have skills and expression. And how do you combine those? But you start with the Dharma and explore from that knowing. And the knowing is basically not knowing. The space of awareness and leaning into this, getting familiar with this space of not knowing. And from the not knowing, then you give an authentic expression. And I wasn't immediately hooked, because I was like, I had to go through the washing machine, I think, first. Because I was very stuck in my conceptual approach to arts, because I come from the 90s. I was educated in the 90s in the arts, and that was all about conceptual arts. There was always a story, very extensive. You have to explain it. And that drove me crazy, because I have no lack of explanations. But I didn't feel any sort of like connection to my own mission, or my own, what am I doing? And I still hadn't with the Dharma arts, but I clicked into some sort of like, like some sort of relief, or some sort of like, wow, this is what it's about. And I could not tell what it was about, but there was a certain recognition, sort of ease, and still I didn't know how to bring these experiences of the creative process, because there was like this series of training on Dharma arts, which is the creative process, and you do all kinds of exercises and meditation in between. And all these exercises are simply exercises to give creative expression from this inner space without any pre-thought idea. And that's quite that's a really interesting space.
Yes, the difference between pure perception and conceptualized perception, and it's what in the direct path we talk about the veil of name and form. So you just see without knowing what anything is, and it's a lovely aspect of living in not knowing.
And you ask, like, is that like all apply? Did you ask, like, does it apply to the arts and also in daily life? Did you ask that?
Yes, absolutely. It's there are times in daily life when we do need to know what things are, because we're engaging with them in a particular way. But much of the time, we don't need to. We can just see, we can just hear, we can just smell, and just allow perceptions to be exactly what they are, which is very beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this, I always say it like now to simplify this in simple, like in simple wordings than the traditional Buddhist terms, is we are just complete. You know, our package is complete. We have this body, we have senses, we have a mind, we have the thinking part, and we have this huge spacious part. And if that combines, that there's so much possible. Like if you lean into this space of not knowing, you don't lose your thinking. You don't lose this knowing of what things mean.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Our space is a huge place, or our awareness is a huge.
Yeah. And I love the idea of basic goodness. It sort of relates to a concept we have in the direct path, that everything is the activity of the one consciousness, so it's naturally good. And there's this lovely saying, all is unfolding as it should, which is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, that's quite a statement to sort of like keep that in mind all the time. Like things could unfold as it unfolds.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there is like, you know, I studied the Buddhist teachings, the Shambhala teachings on basic goodness, and that's also a very direct path, because in the Shambhala teachings there's no Buddha involved, and it's just like this idea or this vision that there is basic goodness, and everything is basically good, and like unconditionally good, so there are no conditions, and everything, and we exist of this unconditional goodness. But then there's the individual expression of each, and how do you shape that, and how do you give that expression in the most authentic and compassionate way, and also not idiot compassion, like you don't forget yourself, like the Dalai Lama calls compassion without compassion for yourself, he calls it idiot compassion.
That's a good expression.
Yeah. So, you know,
I like it.
The Buddhism sort of stimulates a lot, like, you know, be kind to others, and in the process we might forget ourselves.
Yes.
So, you know, Tugam Trungpa, he emphasized the Dharma Art teachings a lot, and actually when we're talking now, I realized it's because you have to be unique in your expression. You cannot be anything else than unique if you want to give authentic expression in an artistic way.
Yes. Yeah.
In the Buddhist teachings, there's this, you know, this Buddha nature, and in the direct path, maybe they call it oneness, or
yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it points all to the same nature, or the universal principles. There's these universal principles which I just love. It's like it's like a manual that we didn't get when we got on Earth. You know, you sort of have to find these chapters of manuals how to be a human being. And then there's these universal principles, and you sort of slowly get them, and then you have to practice them and argue with others. You realize at some point that so for me, I have this total longing for expression. So as a child, I was in totally physical sense. I was always active. I always wanted to become good at anything that I was doing, whether it was like football or hiding or playing cards, or how do you call this kids game with marbles? That you
marbles, yes.
You play these marbles. Like I was so good at it, nobody wanted to play with me anymore. I had all the marbles from all the kids, so I had to lose them on purpose. Had to lose again, so that they want to play with me again. Otherwise, I had nobody to play. So I had like thousands of them, and I was counting them forever. But I have a strong sense of physical expression, and I still have. And at some point I lost that joy, because I didn't know how to be me with all this adult sort of like knowledge and how to figure out life, and having all these concepts and these pre-thoughts that I just copied from, you know, my parents, my environment, my school. I was getting so confused. Maybe I was more confused than the friends around me, because they didn't seem so confused. Or they knew better how to not play confused. That might be debatable.
Mm. I think it's openness also, that sometimes people they're set on a particular path by their parents and then they just follow it. Yeah. But if there's that kind of openness and freedom, then that it works both ways. Sometimes there's craziness that comes out of that, and
yeah. And I noticed, because I teach a lot of Miksang photography at the moment. This contemplative approach to photography, which is based on these Dharma art principles, on these teachings. I get so many who are stuck and uninspired, and they lost their creativity, and especially photographers, they lost their joy in photography. And it's all about, everybody longs for some authentic expression.
Yes.
And where do you find it?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Miksang now. First of all, can you say something about what the word Miksang means, what the derivation is?
Yeah, well, it's a Tibetan word, Miksang, and you are talking to it's Miksang, because it's a Tibetan word. It's not Miksang, which is like very English American. But it's the Tibetan language is like the Sanskrit derives from the religion. So all the words have like different layers of meaning. And Miksang is a combined of two words, and it translates something as good eye. And the word is before the photography, so it's Miksang photography, good eye photography. So the good here points to the unconditional goodness that we were just talking about.
Yes,
it's a different kind of good than how we use it in good and bad. And the eye is that we have this inherent clarity. We can already see clearly. We are born with this ability to see things as they are, without this veil of naming and pre-thoughts and prejudice and all these sort of like complicated think mechanisms. We can create a lot of fog and unclarity with the thinking.
Yes.
But we all have this inherent clarity. And if that comes together and you experience this like of goodness, which is we are basically good. So there's this, I am good, basically good, like complete and pure. And then there's the world around us, which is the same. This is complete and pure. And as it is, and then if that meets, then we have this moment of good I. And that is, and that also is this, what it meets is this beauty of the ordinary world. Because it's not only that the world is as it is around us, but it has also this brilliance. It has this beauty, this ordinary beauty. It's not just neutral, it's really shining.
Yes, yes.
And then if we meet that, like from the heart, I would say, because like I would say, like our purest place in the body is the heart. And if that meets through the eyes, then we have this Miksang moment or experience, and then there is a way to express it with the camera, which is a very easy medium in a way. It's a modern medium, there's nothing exotic about it, and you can express this experience with the camera so that the picture shows exactly what your experience was.
Can you explain about that process of Miksang? What does the Miksang practice involve?
So yes, the Miksang practice is basically a lot about waking up visually, and that's the first layer. And of course, it is not only visually, but you can really wake up to the completely realization that you can see the world as it is in its true brilliance. So there are exercises that focus on looking and seeing, and you wake up the looking so that the seeing becomes more, you notice it more. And then these moments that you notice that are uniquely for you, that something resonates in the world, there's always something that resonates. It is this sort of like, we call that flashes of perception. And they can only resonate because you are available, and it means you are open, and it's not the kind of openness that you are open, leaning in the not knowing, and you don't need to do anything, because that's very well possible. You can lean or like use or activate this awareness, this great awareness in many ways, or you can invite it in many ways. You can't really train it because it's always already there, but you can invite it, and in many ways. And here we actually invite it through the seeing. So we actively go out with our visual awareness from this openness, and that we call available. And then there is something that meets the eye, meets the world, or the world is already there, and it's really waiting to be seen. That's sometimes I feel like it's already there for us all the time, and there is just this sort of like playfulness that we can meet it because it's there waiting for us.
And, yes. There's a lovely expression in the direct path teaching, which is that the world is my body. And the idea is that if you're completely available and you feel the oneness, there's no separation between you and the world. And so it is always there. It is always present, and it is always beautiful and, as you say, shining.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the whole purpose is to visually wake up, or to even, and then also in a greater sense, wake up, like really waking up to your true nature, your own nature. And that is then you wake up to the world that is like inseparable, what you just said. And then there is this sense of lightness coming in, and you know, you can still worry, and you still do your groceries, and you still go to work, and you still have conversations on the street or have appointments, but there's a sense of appreciation that penetrates all your activities. And I wouldn't really say penetrate, because it just starts, like, it's not like a big wake up. That's what I feel, this path. It's not like a big wake up. There are really moments of like clarity, and you understand, wow, it's so easy to see clearly. And then it fades away again. And then how do you, if you have to do something actively, you have to pick up your camera and actually do something with it. So it involves some creative expression, and you have to know something about the medium. You can't just like not know anything about it. Then it becomes sort of random shooting and unprecise shooting. So we become precise in our means, the camera, and that is like, that becomes then part of your life. So there's appreciation you develop for just the world as it is, this brilliance and all these moments. And not only visually, it's like hearing, or like a smell, or like your sense perception. They're just amazing, and that they can bring you right back into the here and now. And we are already in the here and now all the time, but like in a sort of like intimate, like full way, and sort of like this deep joy. That's what I feel. That's a complete possibility there to do that, and then you can always come back to it. So there's not like you have to do it once and then, or twice, and then I know how it works and I can see like that. Why should I take pictures? Because I know how I can see like that. So the taking the pictures is an actually part of the process to keep yourself sort of like communicating with this from this openness, and sort of like, we think a lot also, so it becomes cloudy again, this veil of between me and the world, that it just, it appears again, and you have to sort of purify your clear seeing in a way.
Yes, and you can't actively look for a flash of perception or make one appear, can you? There's an element of trust, isn't there, in a way?
So you are doing Miksang photography. How is that in your experience?
I think that was when I first started. That was actually the hardest thing. I thought, oh no, I go out with my camera. I have this assignment. I have to photograph color, and what's going to happen? It's going to be so embarrassing if there's no flashes of perception. But actually, when you calm down, you say, forget it. It's going to be okay. Everything's all right. And you just go back to that inner stillness, that inner availability. And then for me, it was like magic that flashes appear. And the very first assignment you gave us was color.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd seen colour so strongly before. I think that was really the effect. Yeah.
It's an exercise, so we call it like the colorfulness of color.
Yeah.
So we don't photograph colorful things, but we really, it's an exercise that helps you move away from the naming and from the knowing. And it sounds very obvious and clear, but then you go ahead with your assignment, and then you're like, where is it? How do I do it? And you get familiar with noticing, and then you start just seeing the world in its brilliance, because these colors were always already there. They didn't just pop up because you had this assignment. Yeah, so how is that possible? What was your experience? How come did you suddenly saw these colors so clearly?
Yeah, it's amazing, and really the more Miksang I did, the more, even when I didn't have my camera with me and I was doing ordinary things, there would be those flashes of perception would appear, this sudden sort of brilliance, or sometimes just a quiet shiningness, which is lovely.
Yeah. And that's it's a profound path of like direct perception and trusting your unique perceptions, because that's quite something. You can even stand in front of, I heard you and Richard talk a lot, like you were standing next to each other, but you just see different things. Even when you think you look at the same thing, you actually don't know what the other person sees. Like
yes.
that's very rare, though. I mean, like very, very rare that happens.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. When I look at other people's Miksang photographs, initially in the first courses we did, I always thought, oh, what's that? I want to know what it is. I want to know its name. And then after a while, it just becomes irrelevant. No, I don't want to know what it is. I don't care what it is. I just enjoy the image. I just enjoy the photo, what it expresses. And seeing that what was photographed was not an object. It was a perception. It was not an object.
And of course they have forms and shapes, and we know the name of it, but like seeing from the heart and having these flashes of perception and able to express them, it becomes like a timeless moment caught in on a two-dimensional image on our surface. And now it's not only paper anymore. We look at screens, at our perceptions, and image is very strong, and you can transfer this whole heart quality through the image to another person. And that there's these timeless moments, and then of course people would like to name it, but still, there is like this quality. I would say that's just pure poetry. If you try to explain it, it's like that you don't explain poetry. You just take it in, or you offer it and to the world, and that's what I think is also very beautiful, to offer these timeless moments that are non-conceptual, because it's still photography, and photography is basically all about the image, the end result, and photography talks about the cameras and the lenses and the end result, the photograph, and it should mean something, or we name it, or it points to something, or you want to tell a story with it, or or you would like to make a statement, or photography is used in a conventional way. I call that in a conventional photography. It's a lot about the picture. And here we shift to the process of perception. to first start looking and seeing and recognizing what comes to you from this availability to you, very personal. This is this personal magic, and this, I always say, like, that's how you meet the sacred world, through these sense perceptions, like this one moment at a time.
Yes, yeah. And I think this, just seeing beauty in things that aren't conventionally regarded as beautiful. I remember walking down a path at Zandvoort, and there was this plastic bag, like from that you put vegetables in, and at a supermarket, and it was just lying on the side of the path, and I saw it and I took a photograph. You wouldn't know from the photo that it was a plastic bag.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was beautiful. There was this tremendous beauty in it, and yet, you know, for many people that would be, oh, that's litter, that's bad.
Yeah.
But we're escaping with Miksang. We're escaping from that duality of opposites, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. And also, you know, that's basically what our thinking mind does. That's how we are used to in the West. That our thinking mind, we need to know what it is, and then we like it or we don't like it, and then we sort of wrap around it like a nice little colored flag around it, and this is then the world, and I know where I am, and that's okay. And then I can take a picture of it, and I can show others what I have seen. And then, yeah, that's, I mean, the photography there's never been so much photography in the world as this moment. It's overwhelming how many people that take pictures of objects, and we can see it's a church, and then they put it on, it's a church. Like, I don't know why would you do that. And basically, there are way more beautiful postcards of churches, by the way. So I don't ever make an image of a church anymore, because I rather buy a postcard that is made with a way better camera, from a professional photographer. So that's this documenting. There's some sort of need to document. That's one part, like that we show others, like, this is what I have seen and this is what I have experienced. But from here, we really talk about these intimate experiences, like with something that's on the floor, on the ground. You travel all the way to Holland, come to Zandvoort, and then you go home with a picture of litter. And you're like joyful, like, and you like the way you talk. It's just like joy expressing from that.
Yes.
That's the funny story. From the direct perception story, that's meeting the sacred world, because the meaning, the liking, disliking, all drops away, and then there's just this meeting of something that there's beauty in everything, and then we go beyond our dividing mechanism and liking and disliking. So all these, you call it like these predispositions that we have, all these these likes and dislikes that become preferences. That's like that's helpful in a way, but when it becomes too solid, it's preventing us to meet the world. It's preventing us to unfold our full selves.
Yeah. What are the main problems that you find students encounter in their Miksang practice? Obviously, that's one of them, that sort of duality side, but I think there are probably others as well.
Oh yeah, there's like depending from which direction participants come in. Either they come from the spiritual side, that they are interested in the creative process from direct perception, and like the Dharma, the truth part, getting curious about how you can express yourself. And they're slightly stuck in their spiritual sort of progress, or like getting bored with the same instructions. So there's some stuckness there often. Or there's pure curiosity. or they come from the photographer's side. And the moment, because I do teach these online courses, there's a lot of photographers coming towards the online courses, and they basically all have the same obstacle. They've lost their creativity. There's no sense of it. They can't make any sense of it. The camera lies still, and then when they go into the course, they all meet their photographic ambition. Like the idea of wanting to make beautiful pictures is so strong that it's almost an insult to just to do colorfulness, to just like shift to the process of perception.
Yes, yeah.
And at the same time, it's fully enjoyable, because then they start understanding, oh, but I actually did had a good time just walking around looking at color, and I've seen the world as never before. Like see the same world fresh and new. So fresh is the key concept of like in Miksang photography. It's all about fresh perception, fresh pictures, and fresh is the opposite of conceptual.
Yes, absolutely. And really, when you feel I want to make something beautiful, then that's really ascribing creativity to yourself, rather than the idea that creation is already there, and you're discovering it. That's my feeling about Miksang, that I'm discovering the innate creativity of the oneness of pure consciousness.
Right.
And it's because in a way it's a bit egoic, isn't it, to say, oh, my creativity has gone. There's ego there somewhere, isn't there?
Like I said, like they lost the inspiration, so they don't have the creativity anymore. Yes, well, that's because there's a strong concepts especially in photography, that you need to either to have a certain talent to become like a good photographer, or you have to study certain themes and go into depth. So you go do landscapes and you travel, find all kinds of landscapes. And that's a lot of thinking. So like of course there's ego involved. I think ego has a certain purpose, of course. It's like giving us structure in life. But if ego overtakes, then it becomes like this constant struggle in like pushing and pulling, like even like that doesn't make a great picture. What I see that does make a great picture, that's already pushing and pulling. And ego is like having you have these inner conversations with yourself about what is beautiful and not beautiful. And basically if you go back to what this inner conversation is about, it's always about, if you make a beautiful picture, you get a compliment from someone else.
Yes.
So that's what it's all about. You would like to get confirmed in something. So there's a lot of you say like really not like there's no confidence in there that how to express yourself. And I have to say, it's not taught in regular or conventional photography. It's really taught like you have to be unique, you have to be talented, you have to be study certain like topics or themes and go into depth. And this idea that there is this pure expression and this pure creativity that doesn't belong to other or self, that's like well, that's the practice part. It's not a concept that you can't just say like, this is what we're going to do. You know, you have to invite yourself into this space and bring yourself out in this space by dissolving everything that you have gathered about yourself, your ideas about yourself and your ideas about the world, and what you project onto the world, like I like it, I don't like it. And well, and as a photographer, there's and actually the flashes of perception is not property of Miksang photography. Everyone has these flashes of perception all day long. It's like for the senses, they come in already. And especially photographers, they know this experience, and some photographers, they know how to express it. But they cannot explain how they did it.
Yes.
And they don't know how to return to this state of being. There's no language in there. There's no teachings in there involved. And I think that's what Dharma art teachings offer, these principles, these exercises that you can always return to, this availability and trusting to learn that the not knowing, that's where the real creativity happens.
And it's effortless as well. That's what's so beautiful. There isn't that kind of struggle that you might have with conventional photography. There's no struggle at all. It's just effortless.
Yeah. So for me, it is indeed like totally. That was my big relief, and that's why I love it. It's like I don't need to work so hard.
Yeah.
I don't need to study photography in depth. You need to know something. And I've seen you learning to handle your camera. You didn't know anything about the camera.
No, I didn't.
How was that for you?
Well, you see, Richard, my husband, is a very good photographer. Technically, he was photographing objects for, well, since he was quite a young boy, really, and he loved it, and he's very into anything technical. And so when we would go on holiday, and I would take no interest in the camera because he could produce beautiful pictures. So why would I bother to learn anything about it? But Miksang was something quite different. You don't need to know all the very complicated features of a camera. You need to know a few simple basic features, and it didn't take long to learn that. And then it's that effortlessness which I think appealed to me more than anything. I didn't want something that I was always going to struggle with.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's definitely that I recognize. So yeah, for me, it's a way of engaging with the beauty of the world, the ordinary daily world. So I don't need to go, take trips to certain places or wait for certain times that the light is right, or that I have to climb onto a certain point of or structure that nobody has seen it from that point of view. And it's like using the camera in a very easy way, knowing how certain principles of the technique work. It is all about, this is how I see the world, and this is how the picture shows, this is how sharp I see it. And because we see sharp, so the picture needs to be sharp. The digital cameras these days, they do their job so beautifully well by itself. So it's not rocket science anymore.
Yeah.
So I can always take my compact camera, and when I see something, I stop. Whether it's like something, a little leaf that lies on the sidewalk, and I suddenly see it fully in the midst of cars driving by, somebody with a dog passing it. I say hello, and I make a picture, and I take a few seconds the time to make my picture, and I have such joy in simply stopping, taking time for this small moments, which is huge in itself, because it's like I realize more and more these days, I'm suddenly in this, suddenly I sort of like am in this phase that I realize this is the sacred world. Yes. These moments, this is the sacred world. And if you stop for these moments, this is how we bring sacredness into the world. And people see it, and I relax deeply from that. And I think because I'm more relaxed and I appreciate the world, and I really stop for these moments, and you give expression, and you give expression, and other Miksang photographers or practitioners give expression. That's how we remind the world of its sacredness. We remind the people of these sacred moments. And you can do it beautifully with your camera, and even with your smartphone. I'm not a big fan of that at the moment still, but it's possible.
Yeah, so yeah, it does change the way you experience life. I think that's really what I found. It's that sort of slowing down a bit, not wanting one thing after another, just appreciating what's there, and greeting the world with openness.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I think, yeah.
So what changed for you when you now walk from point A to point B, when you leave your house and you go do a grocery? Did anything change for you before Miksang, and now will you know how to look, or you can?
Yes, things. I think there's more mental quietness, a lot more mental quietness, and there are flashes of seeing, but also flashes of hearing as well. Sounds also, because somehow Miksang accentuated that too, and I think less judging of any perceptions. I used to think of certain sounds as being bad and nasty, and now just like with sights and the bag by the side of the road, they're just what's there, and it's all beautiful. It's just being alive is beautiful in itself. I mean, my teacher, Francis Lucille, said that there's 3 paths to understanding our true nature. There's the path of truth, love, and beauty. And truth is what he teaches. That's the direct path. But he leaves us to find for ourselves the path of love and beauty. And certainly for me, Miksang is a lovely way of practicing the path of beauty. It's it works. It's and I think it's I think it also works because unlike a lot of other arts, you don't require all this huge amount of technical skill and many years of practice, and like playing a musical instrument, it requires an awful lot of years of practice to be able to produce a sound that you like out of it. But with Miksang, it doesn't take that long. So I think it's a lovely practice for people who want to follow the path of beauty but don't feel they have any particular natural talents.
And also people who don't like to do a sitting meditation long, or are like feeling restless with that. That's like an amazing way to also practice what you said, like it really quiets your mental gossip, I call it.
Yes.
And there's so many mental chatter going on. We call that also an obstacle. I would say in terms of obstacle, that's like a huge obstacle, this mental chatter.
Yeah.
That's how that we suffer from that.
And
to
but it goes naturally. That's the amazing thing. It's not that you're trying to stop it.
Yes.
It disappears by itself.
No, that's and that's and that's because you cannot think yourself out of the thinking. And, that's like you need some sort of instruction, and like meditation is about breathing, or like leaning in this not knowing. But in this path, it's just you immediately shift to looking. You go from thinking to looking, because you do either you have this experience of looking, or you think about what you're looking.
Yeah.
So it's, you cannot do both. So that's, and that's so close to our, that's so easy to understand from your own experience. So that's then the practice, to always go back to looking.
Yes, and in the direct path, there's a saying, meditation never ends, and it's not talking about sitting meditation.
Yeah.
It's talking about that kind of openness and availability. And in a sense, Miksang never ends. There's always there are always perceptions.
There are infinite perceptions.
Yeah.
There are infinite perceptions. So, and it's not that like if you have had like 1 or 2 or 3 beautiful perceptions, you don't need to have them anymore. That's not required. Like we would like to have we enjoy these sense perceptions, and being able to really have this intimate experience of this beauty of the ordinary world that enriches our lives fully, and then giving expression to it, then we share it. For me, that's definitely a quality or part of it, that you can share these moments with the world. For me, that's a way to beautify the world in a very non-judgmental, no statement way, just pure sharing, sheer beauty.
Yes, yeah. So if people want to learn Miksang, what basic equipment do they need? You don't need an expensive camera with lots of lenses, but maybe a phone isn't quite enough.
Not at the moment, although like in a few years we will have different conversations, or in the coming years, because they're developing quite rapidly. But to start with it, I would recommend like a compact camera, or a lens, or a simple camera with a all-round zoom lens. Doesn't need to be a fancy one, as long as it's digital. So but I'm a big fan of a compact camera, with some sort of like all-round zoom.
Yeah. And there are some very good books on Miksang, but my own view is that you need a teacher, and I think you also learn so much by doing it with other people. That's something I've really enjoyed on your courses. So if people want to do that, you run courses in Europe and online, and I think there are also courses available in the US and Canada, probably, for people if they want to do that.
Yes.
So maybe that's a good place to stop. Thank you so much, Høllen, for sharing your love of Miksang with us all. It's beautiful.
Thank you for inviting me and to have this lovely conversation. We could talk forever on this, and then at the end share our pictures again, which we're going to do soon.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for listening.